All right, welcome everyone. This is now session 2 of Revit Intermediate. So last week, after introducing the unit itself and talking about the assessment requirements, we went in and had a look at a practice exercise, which is this one here, exercise 1, drawing up a small building. Now, we're not going to spend any more time on this tonight, but what I thought I would do is just go through and very quickly draw it up, just mainly the walls, and sort of put in maybe a couple of doors and windows, but I'll see how I go. But I just want to go through and sort of show you the approach that I would take in drawing this up. And also sort of talk about or show you how you can actually very quickly add dimensions to help to assist you in getting the building set out correct, and also the internal walls in their correct position. So what I'll do is I'll open up Revit and start a new project. Now we're going to, once I've gone through this, we're actually going to have a look at exercise 2, which takes us into what we call project phasing, which will be a lead-in to the assessment task. So it's likely that we will start the assessment task next week, but I'd like to go through this phasing exercise to give you a heads up on how phasing or project phasing works in Revit. Now, exercise 1 from last week was designed as revision, and also for me to sort of, I guess, sort of see where you are with the basics of Revit after having done Revit Introduction. Now, just a point, all external students have now enrolled into the Learn website or course. Now, I just want to reiterate that if you are working at home or an external student, you will need to get hold of or download and install Revit 2019. Okay, has everyone got Revit 2019 at home? Yes, okay. So it is essential that if you are working at home that you have the 2019 version. That way there is no problems with compatibility between the classroom computers and your home computers. All right, so looking at this exercise, open up the east elevation. We had the upper level as FCL, and that was 2700, and the lower level was FFL. Go back to the floor plan. Now the wall type that we used, or you used in exercise 1 was the brick veneer 250 timber. Now just before I do that, when you are starting a new Revit project, it's essential that you change to medium detail, then set the wall height accordingly, so FCL here. Change the location line, of course, to finish face exterior. And if it's a rectangular building, what's the quickest way of actually drawing a rectangular building? Do I draw 4 walls? Rectangle. Okay, so using the rectangle tool here, which we just basically draw 2 points, lower left and upper right. Working in the middle of the view, So the idea is just to sort of create the building outline. It doesn't have to be exact to begin with, just roughly. But you'll notice that the way I've drawn it, what's wrong with the walls?
Showing the brick inside.
Yeah, the bricks are on the inside, so the walls are inside out. Now, knowing what you know, a very quick way of selecting the perimeter walls. How do I do that?
Space.
So tab, click. Okay, so change selection. So highlight, hit the tab key, release, and left click the mouse. Now, if I hit the space bar, it flips those walls inside out. Okay, so that's good. Now, from here, we've got a set out of 8790 and 13190. Now, what I would do, or what I do initially, is I will, rather than using temporary dimensions for the set out, I'll actually add aligned dimensions. Now, with your aligned dimensions, you'll need to change this option here to wall faces. You can leave the pick option at individual references, but the other option here, the other choice is something called entire walls. Now, I don't know, I mean, some of you may be aware of this, others may not. Entire walls gives you access to an options button here, which, if I open that one, it has what we call auto dimension options. Now, with auto dimensioning, there are a number of options. You can actually dimension intersecting walls, openings, which are windows and external doors, choosing widths. If you don't select any options there and click OK, you can do that. Just by clicking on the wall, you can produce a dimension. Okay, which is the approach I take. So very quickly, just add a couple of overall dimensions. Okay, so this is based on entire walls as a dimension option, and then in options, nothing is ticked, and it will give you the overall dimensions. Now, I'll just clear that. So once I've got a couple of dimensions there, I then select the respective walls and go over or go up and actually key in what they should be. So that one there and that one there. Okay, so I've now got my building set out correct. Now, if you need to, you can chain select the walls and pin them. Okay, so if you've just gone around and, you know, it might be quite a complex floor plan, you've got all your walls set out correct, you've got dimensions on there, you've updated your dimensions, it's all correct. You might then just go do a chain select and then pin all the external walls so that there's no chance that they're going to move and change the overall proportions. Now, working inside the building, we go back to wall, choose the appropriate wall type, stud timber 90. Make sure that your height is correct. The location line can stay at finish face exterior. And essentially what we do here is that we very quickly draw in these walls. Okay.
We don't have to change it to finish face interior?
No, it doesn't matter. No, it can stay exterior. because at the end of the day, the internal wall positions are going to be determined by dimensions. So it really has no bearing. So you can do interior if you want, but it really doesn't matter. So the idea is that you just very quickly draw up the floor plan or the internal walls, not worrying about exact room sizes or wall positions. And from here, we've got a few more there. So also, are you familiar with the create similar option? Okay, so if I want to draw another one of these walls, I don't really care what it is, I just know I want to draw another one. Select it and then go up here and choose create similar. Now the shortcut for that is CS, and that more or less applies to anything that you're actually producing in Revit. So we've got our basics set out. Now, using auto dimensioning, if I go back to here, align dimension, it's still set on auto dimensioning entire walls. Now, when I go to options, I then select intersecting walls. Okay, and what happens now is this. Okay, so it automatically produces the dimension set by just clicking on, in this case, an external wall. So this is the way that I produce, this is how I build up the floor plan. Okay, using aligned dimensions and doing it as quickly as possible. Okay, don't worry about temporary dimensions. You can use them occasionally. Sometimes they're quite quick to use, but I like to actually put in a formal set of dimensions. They're not necessarily the dimensions that you will perhaps keep for your final floor plan, but I call them working dimensions, although you can keep them if you want. But I guess ultimately you might actually replace them with a different dimension type based on the project requirements. So, so for instance, what we then do is we just systematically go across and selecting the first wall here will activate this dimension, and it's just a case of actually going across and actually just feeding in what that room size needs to be. Okay, so and what we do essentially is we know that these walls have to move, so if the wall has to move you have to select it, and in selecting it, it activates the dimension. So this one becomes 2400. Okay, just click away to deselect. This one then becomes 1710. Clicked away to deselect, and then this one 1820. Click to deselect, and then this one 1510, and the last one is 2600, which is correct. Okay, so providing you've got the overall wall lengths correct, then when you do your internals, they should all add up. So then, well, I should say, with the auto dimensioning, it not only applies to external walls, but you can actually do internals as well. Okay, so whatever wall you click on, providing there are walls that connect with it, it will pick up on or it will produce those dimensions as well. Now the thing is, with the dimension type that I've chosen here, which is the standard 2.5 aerial, the text itself is a little bit too big. So I don't know if you've ever changed the settings within a dimension style before. Okay, but you can very quickly just make these more workable by going into their type properties here, edit type, and these are all the settings that define this particular dimension type. So we could actually rename this one and call it diagonal 2.0 aerial, and just scroll down to the text part of the dimension type and then change the text size here to 2mm. Now the other thing you can change is something called the width factor. So if you actually type in a value less than 1, it's actually going to compress the dimension text to make it a bit more readable. Okay, so we're just making a couple of minor changes here. So if I go to 0.85, which is less than 1, and change the text size to 2 mil and click OK, see the difference? Okay, so you can make an immediate difference there. So it might be, you know, as you're working at placing these working dimensions, it might be that you just go in and edit these, make these changes so that you can actually work with them. They're readable. So looking at this dimension here, that one needs to be what, 2610. So what you do here is select this wall here, which activates this dimension here, and type in 2610. Now, if I go back to the aligned dimension, I can then click on this wall here and then produce a little small little dimension set just to sort this wall out here. So this one here is in fact 1100. So select that wall, type in 1100 there. Okay, so this one here, the dimension there, distance between there and there is a metre. The dimension down here is 44, needs to be 4400. So to change that one, we need to actually select this wall here, key that in, 4400, and this one here is 2510, this one down here. Now the other thing with dimensioning is that, see this dimension set here, if I want to add to that dimension set and then pick up on this wall here, have you done that before? Have you actually added or, you know, or extended a dimension set? So the way that you actually add to an existing dimension set is to select it and then go up here to edit witness line, and that allows you to continue it. So I can then click here, for instance, and here, and here and here, and then create. So the first part of that was created automatically, but the second part was more of a custom, okay, just by individually picking. So in adding to or extending that dimension set, I can then click this wall here, and this dimension here needs to be 3 meters, so just key it in. Okay. Now, if the top of this wall, if the end of this wall needs to actually be at the same height or position as this wall face here, the obvious thing to do there is to use what?
Line.
The align tool. Okay, so rather than trying to sort of work out what that length should be from here, we know it has to line up with this wall face up here. So we use the align tool. So when using the align tool, what's the first thing I pick? What you want to, yes, what you want to align it to. Okay, so you pick the reference. So where is the object going? That's the first pick. Okay, so that's this wall face here, and the second pick is the end of this wall here, and then the two line up. Okay. Now the same over here. So this wall here, we know that has to line up with this wall here. So yes, we could select that wall there and then update that to be the same as that one. But we can also use the align tool and say, okay, well that wall needs to align with that wall at their faces. So select that one first and then that one second. Now you can also lock these two together. So that's called constraining. Now, so that if you select this wall, if you actually change this wall, say to, I don't know, 2400, both walls go together. So both of those walls, although they're separate, they're now constrained or locked together. And if you adjust one, it takes the other one with it. And that's done through the aligning process. Okay, so I'll just undo that. So you can see through the use of dimensioning, align dimensions, you can very quickly establish that plan set out. Now, I'm not going to put in the actual windows and doors, but for instance, if I just put in some quick windows here, and perhaps a door. Sorry, I'll replace this one with a door. Now, you'll notice that I guess the thing is that I'm not going up and clicking on icons when I do this. I'm actually sort of keying in shortcuts. DR for door, WN for window, WA for wall. Okay. Now, if you do want, I mean, I think if you've gone through Revit Introduction, you probably would have got a sheet at the beginning with shortcuts. If you haven't got that, I can get a copy of it for you. But I do encourage you to use shortcuts. Does anyone know how to access shortcuts in Revit? If you need to actually see what they are, or if you want to change them or add to them. Manage tab, View, User Interface, and Keyboard Shortcuts. Okay, so this is where this is where keyboard shortcuts are set and managed. If you want to perhaps have a look at the shortcuts that are assigned to sort of visibility related commands, such as hiding, you could type in the word hide, and that will just filter just anything with the word hide in it for shortcuts and so forth. Anything to do with zoom, there's all your zoom commands. So you can operate much quicker if you have a few shortcuts that you remember, or you have a sheet next to you you can refer to, and get used to those shortcuts. You can actually work very quickly. and more productively. So, and the keyboard shortcuts dialog also has a shortcut to open it, so it happens to be KS, keyboard shortcuts. So with our doors and windows, windows and external door, with your align dimension, still using the entire walls option, which is auto dimensioning. So rather than picking up on intersecting walls, we can actually then go to openings and choose widths, and then it'll pick up on your windows and external doors. So in repositioning those, it's just a case of actually clicking directly on the window or door and updating the dimension. Okay. So just very quickly, that's the approach I take. Okay. So I guess when you're drawing walls, try and draw them, in the most efficient way that you can. Don't sort of draw part walls, just draw the whole wall if you can. Look at the plan and think about the way that you would add the walls, and then start adding them in the most efficient way possible. All right. And again, don't worry about exact room sizes. You can sort that all out once you put your dimensioning around it. All right. So, and as I say, we're going to have a look at the second exercise for tonight, which will what you'll actually do is actually draw up another small rectangular building, not as complex, but we're going to use that to have a look at the concept of project phasing in Revit. So what I'll get you to do is, if we go back to learn to the practice exercises here, which is this section here. Now, down here, I've opened up or made available project phasing in Revit. Now, I'll talk about the concept behind project phasing. So it's also called timelining. And as I said, we're going to use the principles of phasing in the assessment task, which will probably be next week. But this exercise is designed to introduce phasing and show you how it works in a very, very simple exercise. What you will be required to do in the exercise itself is actually draw up a very simple rectangular building. Now, if you can open up the procedure document, which looks like this, if I just scroll ahead, on page 4, this is the floor plan that I'd like you to draw up. Now, I'd also like you to put a roof and a floor on it. And I have provided you with the wall types, the door and window types, and down here, the roof type and the pitch. You've got floor to ceiling height there. All windows to be at 2100 high, and there you're going to place a generic floor at the base, and also include a 600mm eave overhang. Okay, so I guess the thing is that this is drawing up this is going to be very similar to what you did last week in that first practice exercise, albeit much simpler. So what I'll get you to do, if I just go back, as I say, you're going to start a new Revit project from the architectural template. You're going to name it this, exercise 2, phasing, you're going to just make sure that your save reminder is set to 15 minutes. And do you all know how to actually, when you're doing a file save as, go into options and then restrict the backups to 2? Yeah. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's all part of the initial setup. So there is an A3 reference sheet which we'll have a look at later, and I'll explain what the purpose of that A3 sheet as we go through and talk about the principles of phasing. So initially you're going to establish levels and then change some settings in your floor plan and then select your wall types, set your ceiling height, and then begin drawing up the existing, what we're deeming the existing building plan. All right, so we won't spend too long on this. So if you can sort of start drawing that up for me. If you are having difficulty with the roof, I'll go through that again if you're not sure how to do the roof or the floor. So we'll just make sure that we do get our settings correct on that one. Okay, with the building set out, I have all my walls, doors and windows in place. Now, going back to my demonstration with exercise 1 and using automatic dimensioning, entire walls, and then if I click options and choose, rather than openings, I choose intersecting walls. Now, it doesn't matter whether these dimensions are deemed working and you're going to delete them afterwards, or they're going to be dimensions that you keep. Okay, when you produce a set of dimensions, okay, you are aware that when you create a new set of dimensions and you approach an existing set, there is a point at which the second set of dimensions will actually stick or lock. Are you aware of that? I'm not sure if we can pick it up here. There. Okay. So at a certain point, the dimension will actually stick and lock, and it's very hard to see. If I move out there and I move back in again, can you see there's a little blue dash? There's a blue dashed line that is sitting there just to the right of that yellow spot. There's a blue dashed line. Okay. Now that is a guide or a reference for the correct placement of dimensions to provide you with consistent equal spacing. And when you are working with dimensions generally, and I would expect that you would do this at any time that you're actually putting dimensions in, is make sure that you actually lock them in so that each dimension set is the same distance from the previous. Now this is vital, absolutely vital. And why I say it's vital is because when we come to do our assessment task, visually your dimensions have to look good, they have to be spaced consistently, and this is the way that you achieve that, through this particular technique or process. So when it locks in and you get that blue dashed alignment line, you left click and then the distance between here and here is set correctly. Now, so what is the distance, or what should it be? Now, I'll just escape here. Now, if I select one of those dimensions and I go back into its properties, its type properties, the distance between the dimensions is specified or set here in this setting here called dimension line snap distance. Okay, and it's currently set to 10 millimeters. Okay, so I can set that to, let's say, excuse me, 8 or 7.5. Now, when I click OK, my dimension won't move, but if I drag that down and then drag it back up again, it will see how it's sticking there now, and it's closer to the dimension above. I've got my dashed line out the side there. When that dashed line appears and you can feel that sticking, that's its correct position. Okay? So if I go back to my plan here and I say, okay, well, I now want to actually put in a dimension set that picks up on my windows. I go back, I just clear that, hit escape a couple of times, click align dimension, and it doesn't matter whether it's auto dimensioning or whether it's individual. Okay, so I'll go back to individual and I'll just pick individually. Now, auto dimensioning, although it's good and quick, is not going to work in every situation. So it's not something you'll use all the time. So on occasions, you'll have to do individual picking. But either way, when you approach that, and you'll feel it stick, if I can get it there. See the dashed line? That's my position. I left click and place. So that now the spacing between that one and that one is the same as that one and that one. Complete consistency, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so even if you're actually putting in a temporary set of dimensions like this for working, make them look neat. All right. And if you've actually placed a set of dimensions around your floor plan, just move them out and give yourself some room, because you're going to have to add a roof. Okay, you're going to have to put a roof on this building and you'll need some working room.
Can you repeat the step in which you did the editing of this snap of the line?
Yep. So the distance between there and there is determined by going into the type properties of the dimension, going down to this setting here, which is dimension line snap distance. It's by default it's set to 10. I've changed it to 7.5. Okay. All right, so I'll just give you a few more minutes just to finish off this floor plan, and we'll have a look at putting the roof and floor on.
Excuse me, Russell.
Okay, so if you want to move your dimensions out as a group, then the way that I do it is to actually click and drag and put a crossing, a crossing window through each set, like that. Now you can either then left click and drag the entire set up, or if you hold your shift key down and hit the up arrow key on your keyboard, you can actually nudge them up like that, or down. But it's important to actually do them as a group, so that you're not adjusting or not affecting the spacing of them. So again, just select them as a group, and in this case, shift and right arrow to move out, shift and left arrow to move in. But just allow yourself enough space to put that roof in. So adding the floor and the roof, I guess you've done this many times before. You've done it quite a bit in Revit Introduction. Now the the floor itself, if we go to floor here, we're going to use the generic 150. Now to add the floor, what other changes do we have to make? For us to actually extend the floor to the outside walls, outside wall faces, what do we have to change here in the settings? Untick extend, yes, correct. Untick this one here, extend into wall to core. Okay. Now, if you then just pre-select the first wall here, notice that when I move from outside to inside, see the blue dashed line sort of jumping from inside to outside? So what you'll need to do is actually sort of head towards the outside of the wall. Now to place the sketch lines for the floor quickly, you can hit the Tab key and select all 4 walls, and then when you click the first wall, the wall that you're over, it places the 4 sketch lines on the outside of the walls. So that's all you need to do, providing you've selected the right floor type. Okay, so sketch lines are there, and then click green tick to finish. So that produces the floor. Now, just digressing slightly, I'm going to hit the escape key a couple of times to deselect it. Now, just in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, there are 5 icons initially. There's one called Select Links, Select Underlay Elements, Select Pinned Elements, and Select Elements by Face. And the 5th one is Drag Elements on Selection. So they're all icons that are related to some type of selection. Now, I guess as you're working with Revit, whether it be here or at home, I would strongly suggest that the first 4 icons, and notice that you can actually, if you click on them, it puts a red cross against them. If you click on it again, it removes that red cross. So the red cross against the icon means that that selection method is disabled. If the red cross is not there, it's enabled. So my recommendation is the first 4, click on them to remove the red cross. Okay, the only icon that should have a red cross against it is the 5th one, which is Drag Elements on Selection. So that option should be disabled. In other words, a red cross on it. Okay. Now, the roof. So to place the roof, what view do we do that in? Ceiling level. Okay. And we go architecture, we click roof, and we select roof by footprint. Now we're going to place a generic 125 roof on, this one here. Now to achieve an overhang of 600, we actually have to put in an overhang of 760. And we have to then tick this option here, which is extend to core. Okay. So overhang of 760, extend to core, and then using this option here, which is the default, pick walls. We then approach one wall here. Now we can, I think, actually, once we pre-select the first wall, we can actually hit the Tab key, I think, maybe not. We'll have to do it by clicking individually. So just working around and placing 4 sketch lines. Okay, I'm just going to hit the escape key a couple of times. So each of those sketch lines, the little triangle there, what does that signify or mean?
Slope.
Yeah, so that signifies or indicates that each sketch line with that triangle is going to contribute to the pitch of the roof. Now the pitch of the roof is going to be what? 22.5. So what we can do is what we can do is we can select all 4 sketch lines quickly by doing what? How do we select these sketch lines very quickly?
Tab.
Tab and click. Okay, now the 4 sketch lines collectively have an overhang of 760, which is correct. They are all defining the pitch or the slope, and they all need to be, or the pitch needs to be 22.5. So it just makes sense. It's more efficient to actually select all of them and then adjust the pitch to 22.5. So having done all that, we then click OK, which will then produce the roof. So having a look at this building in 3D, that's what we currently have. So that's enough, that's all we really need to continue on with this exercise to have a look at phasing. All right, so if you can just very quickly finish that off and we'll move on. Oh, the other thing is, what you'll need to do is actually make the roof visible in the floor level view and make it visible and change it to a dashed line type.
That's where I got a problem in previous task.
Okay, so how do we actually make it visible in the floor plan view? Okay, so what's an underlay? What does that do?
Graphic visibility. Showing things which are...
The underlay setting allows you to see what's on the level below or the level above. So it's not a visibility setting, although it does show us the roof. It's not a visibility setting, it's just showing us what's above, if there's anything above, and what's below, if there's anything below the current level. So that's the purpose of the underlay optional setting. So to show the roof in this view, through the view properties, we actually go to the underlay section, and it's the base range level, or range base level, which is currently set to none, which we change to ceiling level. Okay, so it actually turns on the roof, which is at ceiling level, or shows us the roof at ceiling level as an underlay. Now to change the lines or the line work from solid or continuous to dashed, select the roof, go up here to override graphics and view, by category, and the line work here is foreground, projection lines up here, and it's more specifically it's the actual pattern. So we're changing the projection line pattern from by object style to center, spelt CENTRE. Okay, essentially you can change it to anything you like, but basically I sort of specify center as the line style for my drawings, and then click OK.
Can you please repeat? Where did you open visibility graphics?
No, I didn't do it through visibility graphics.
I mean, to change the line to dash line.
Yeah, okay, so select the roof. Now you can either go up to the view panel, up to here to override graphics and view. So click that, the arrow next to it, and choose override by category. Okay. You can also do it by right mousing on the roof and going override graphics and view by category. It's exactly the same setting. So there's your view specific category graphics, and we're talking about projection lines and changing the pattern to center. Okay, so just a few more minutes on this one and then we'll move on. Yeah, okay. Now, just what we'll do is we'll actually just switch to a 3D view. Now, in my 3D view, I don't have the level lines, but you will. Okay, so what I'll get you to do is actually hide the level lines by category in the 3D view. Now, if I click this icon here, which is Reveal Hidden Elements, you can see the level lines are there, but they're currently hidden in this Reveal Hidden Elements view. Now, if I select one of them, if I actually want to switch them back on again or make them visible, if I select one of them, I can then come up here and do an unhide category and then go back to my light bulb down here and then toggle back to my 3D view. Now, to actually hide something in a view by category, you would select one of them. There's a couple of ways of doing it. You can actually right mouse on the object and do a hide in view by category. You can select one of them, come up here and hide by category. Now, doing it this way, you'll notice here, if I can get that back up again, see in the description the drop list, it says hide category in brackets VH. So what does the VH mean? That's a shortcut for hide category. So if I select an object and I type the letters VH, it hides that object plus the category that it belongs to in the view. So just by using the VH. So if you can do that and just hide those level lines. All right, so we now have this little building, and we're now going to go and have a look at, I guess, setting this little exercise up for what we call project phasing. Now, I'm just going to come back to the Learn site here to practice exercises and to project phasing. Now, in the introduction here, so in any project, you or the client may want to view the model according to phases. Now, phases represent distinct time periods over the duration of a project. You can create as many phases as necessary and assign building model elements to those specific phases. Now, what we're going to do in this exercise is the same as what we're going to do in the assessment task, is that the whole idea behind this is that we're going to start off with an existing building, so a building that was built in the past, and we're going to make internal changes to it. So we're going to demolish parts of the building and rebuild parts of the existing building internally, and we're also going to add an extension to it. Okay, so the rebuilding of the internal aspects of the existing building and the extension qualify as new construction. Okay, so we're going to manage this project, as the description says here, in time periods. So effectively what we have to do is we have to distinguish between the existing and the current in terms of time periods. So effectively what we do is we actually send the existing building back in time, because we're working in the present. So anything we do to the building in the present, such as demolition or new construction, obviously has to be separate from the time it was actually built in the past. So there has to be that time difference. Now we don't know what that time difference is. I mean, the building itself that we've just drawn up could have been built in 1975 or 1985. It doesn't really matter, but we actually deem it to be a building built in the past. Okay, and we're doing work on it currently, so we have to make that distinction in time. This particular document here, which is called Phases, an overview of Revit phases, sort of talks about what phases are in Revit, and again it talks about the separate time periods or milestones within the life of the project. So they can represent either the time period itself or the status of the project at that point in time. So when would you use phases and why? So, and again, I guess this first example here, you have an existing building that you are refurbishing or extending, and consequently you need to show the building before and after the refurbishment takes place. So the thing is that we start with an existing floor plan, we send it back in time, and then we set about to demolish it and then reconstruct it, or reconstruct parts of it. And in terms of documentation, we need to show the building as it was. We need to show the floor plan or the building in its demolition stage, and we then need to show the building in its fully completed new construction phase as built. So show the client. So that's what we're going to do. And through a process of phasing, which is a feature of Revit, we can achieve all this with one model, okay, with one model itself. So we're starting off with the existing building, and that existing building is going to serve us for demolition and also for the new building or the rebuilding aspect of it. So we're not going to replicate the building itself to show the different phases or the different time periods. We're just going to work with one model. But ultimately we will actually create several, or not several, but at least 3 floor plans that will show the progress of this build. So as it was, demolition, and new. So that's the whole sort of ethos. That's what we're going to do in this little exercise and the assessment task itself. Now the thing is that, as it says here, with I guess it's probably an unfortunate term, dumb CAD. The thing is that with programs like AutoCAD, which are purely 2D and purely rely on just drawing lines, to achieve this in a program like AutoCAD, you would have to draw up the existing, you'd have to make a copy of that and then mark that for demolition, make another copy and then remove the demolition, the items that have been demolished, and then put in the new construction. So you'd have to then manage 3 separate floor plans and maybe 3 separate sets of elevations, who knows. But with Revit, we can actually do that or achieve that with one model, which is quite clever. So rather than sort of going, this document sort of, I've put this up because it just goes through and talks about, I guess, the phasing aspect of Revit and how it works. But I think probably what we'll do and what we will do is, rather than me sort of reading through this, we'll actually do it, and I'll show you how it works. So how does Revit handle phases? So virtually every component that you produce in Revit, and we're talking mostly about 3D objects, has a parameter that defines what's known as its phase, or its phase created. Okay, so every time you put together a Revit model, without you knowing it, it's actually put into a time period. And by default, that time period is the present. And that phase for the present is known as new construction. Now, in terms of the phases in a Revit project, there are 2. There is new construction, and there is a phase that comes before new construction called existing. And we'll actually go back to Revit and have a look at that. So back to our Revit model here, and I'll just go back to the floor plan, and I'll close inactive views. Now, the little floor plan that you just drew up, at the moment, although we're calling it the existing building, it exists in the present. And the way that we know that is that when you drew this up in the current view, the floor plan view, if you select any aspect or any part of this particular model, such as a wall, and you have a look at the properties of the wall itself, if you actually scroll right down to the end of the properties, you've got this area here called phasing. I'll just extend that out. Now you've got, under phasing, you've got phase created, and next to it you've got new construction. Can everyone see that? Yeah. Okay. So in this default Revit template, there are 2 phases. There's new construction and there's existing. Now, new construction comes after existing in terms of the timeline. Now, it is possible, of course, to change the phase created of an object to a previous phase. So you can see here we've got existing as well. So for us to actually send this wall, this object back in time, we change the phase from new construction to existing. And what that does is it puts it back in time. Okay, it defines it as an existing building. So why has this wall, why is it currently assigned to the new construction phase? Okay, and the answer is, if I deselect the wall, okay, deselect the wall, I go back to properties here. Now, if nothing is selected in the current view, the properties that are displaying, what are the properties what are they of? What are the properties displaying? So if nothing is selected, what are these properties here? What are they of? What are they describing? They are something. Yeah, the view. So these are the properties of the current view. Okay? If I select an object, the properties change to the properties of that object. If I deselect it, the properties just revert back to the properties of the current view. Now, if we scroll down to the end of the properties of the view, the view itself also has some phasing settings. Now, the phase, so the view itself can be assigned a phase, okay? And the phase of the current view, the floor plan view, is new construction, as was the wall that I selected. So what's happening here is that as we are adding building components to the current view, the building components are taking on the phase of the view. That's how the phase created is allocated, or that's how it works. So the view has a phase of new construction. If you add building elements to that view, they take on that phase. That's their phase created. Okay. So that's what happens. If the phase of this view happened to be something else, and I added components to it, the components would take on that alternative phase. All right. Now, what we're going to do, and I guess before we make any changes here, I'll just draw your attention to an area where we control phasing, which happens to be on the Manage tab. Okay, so click the Manage tab and then go across to the phasing panel here and the phasing button and open that. So this is where the phasing within a project is managed. Now on the first tab here you've got project phases. So you've got up the top here you've got past, down here you've got future. Okay, by default you've got the two phases, existing and new construction. Okay, so existing structures and topography. New construction is proposed structures and topography. Now, the name of these phases is really irrelevant because you could actually change existing to before and new construction you could call after. Okay, so you can really call them anything you like, but we're not going to change the name of them. We'll just keep them as they are. But as you can see, our current building is assigned to the new construction phase, so it's currently in the present. Okay. Now, if we change the phase created of all these objects to existing, it effectively takes that building back in time. So it goes back into the past. All right. So once it's in the past, anything that we do to it now is in the present. So we have that distinct time gap. So we'll come back to this particular dialog later because there's a tab there called phase filters and one called graphic overrides. But we'll just sort of take one step at a time. So close that dialog if you have it open. Now, the next logical step is to actually select the entire building and then send it back in time. Okay. In other words, change the phase created of all of the 3D objects to the existing phase. So to do that completely, it's best that we do it in the 3D view. So if you can just open up your 3D view, and to change an object, to change the phase created of an object, of course you have to select it and then change it in the properties. But what we do this all in one operation. We select the building with a selection window which selects all components, and then collectively in the properties of those components we change the phase created here from new construction to existing. All right, and then just click click out here in a free area to deselect. So when you, so now that, you know, if any of these components now, if you actually select any of these components, you'll see that the phase created is now existing.
We can do it on floor level as well by selecting the floor
Oh,
level.
you can do it in a floor plan, but if you don't have your roof visible, you won't select the roof in the floor plan. So it's best to do it in the 3D view so that you make sure that you get all your components. And in a floor plan view, you might not be able to select your floor. Okay, so we do it in 3D so that we make sure we get everything. Okay. Now, I want you to go back to the floor plan. Okay, so just reopen the floor plan. It's changed. Okay. So how has it changed? The walls now are solid black, so there's no detail in them. Okay. So I guess the question is, why has it changed? And why has it changed to black solid? Okay. So the thing is that in this current view, what is the phase of the current view?
Existing.
No. We haven't changed the phase of the current view. Yes, the phase of the current view is unchanged because it's still new construction. What we have changed is the phase of the building elements, not the view. So there's now a difference between the phase of the building element as opposed to the phase of the view. There's a difference. There's a time difference now. So we've sent this building back in time. But in this view, we're working in the present. And we can prove that by drawing a new wall, by drawing a wall. Just draw a 90mm stud wall anywhere in the building and see what happens. Okay? So that wall there, so I'll hit escape. That wall there, this is an existing wall. This wall here is a new wall. We're actually this is classified as new construction. Okay? Because the phase of the view is still set to new construction. So anything that we add to this view is going to be brand new. And if we click on this additional wall, we can see under its phasing setting, phase created new construction. Okay? Hit escape a couple of times. Now the view properties in terms of phasing is new construction. See, the phase of the view is still new construction. Okay? All we've done is selected the building and sent it back in time. So if the phase of the view is different to the phase created of the building, okay, if those two are different, then the appearance of the building changes. Okay, and that's how Revit manages or defines or determines what is new and what is existing. It applies an override. It makes the walls thick black. Okay, so we can see visually that this is new, this is existing. Okay, so there's a graphic override applied. Now, to understand how that happens or where it happens, we have to go back to Manage and Phases here. And we go to this tab here, which is Graphic Overrides. Okay, so we talk about the phase status. Okay, so an existing object, an object that we deem existing, is going to have a cut pattern which is solid black. Okay. Now over here, see where it's this black swatch here? Now if you click on that and click again, it opens up this fill pattern graphics. Now if you change the pattern, solid fill pattern, if you actually change the colour, the colour here, let's say you change it to dark blue. Okay, and click OK, OK, and apply. The walls in the background change to dark blue. Okay, so we're just changing the colour in this case. It's still solid, but we're changing the colour. So the override that's applied, it's still an override being applied, but we can actually tailor the colour. However, we can make it whatever we want.
Just when you asked me that the view is not an existing one, it's a new construction, right? So how come it's showing that it's existing, the walls are existing? A little confused on that.
The view itself is still new construction,
okay.
So that's the phase of the view. What we did previously was we actually selected the building and we changed its phase to existing. So in doing that, we changed the phase of the objects to existing. So the
so the individual walls and all the elements, they are existing.
They're existing, yeah. However, the phase of the view is still new construction. And if we actually draw walls, doors and windows in the current view, they're going to be assigned to the new construction phase. So they will appear normal. In other words, they won't have a graphic override applied, as does these walls here. Okay, so in this area here of the phasing dialog, what this does is it basically any walls, any objects that are deemed existing, which these walls are going to have a graphic override applied, and when they do, that override is going to be determined by the settings through here. Okay. Now, when we come to the demolition stage, when we demolish objects, anything that we demolish is going to appear as a red dashed line with a crosshatch. Okay, so that's automatic. Revit will apply that override. New construction, anything that's deemed new, is going to have black lines and no infill pattern, and it's going to appear normal. Okay. So we'll just change this. Just click on this one here and change that back to black, which it was. But what we will do, we'll go back into, once we change it back to black, we'll go back into fill pattern graphics, and what I'll get you to do is actually here, under pattern overrides, is actually where it's next to foreground, just untick the box there, which is the visible box, untick visible, click OK, and then if we leave the dialog open and click apply, in the background what we have is black lines but no solid infill. Alright, so we've actually just turned off, we've actually hidden the pattern completely by unticking that box there. Okay, so we're just going to have the these lines here showing as just single lines like that. So these are the sort of changes you can make to the view itself by changing these aspects here. So we'll click OK on that one, apply and OK. So so here we have the existing building. All right. Now, what we do next is we set up some new floor plan views. So we're going to end up with 3 separate floor plan views. We're going to leave the floor level view as it is basically, and we're going to make a copy of this one, a duplicate. So if you right mouse on the floor level view, go up to duplicate view and click duplicate. Now, does anyone know the difference between duplicate and duplicate with detailing? The only difference really is that if you actually select with detailing, it's going to replicate the annotation. So if you have text, tags, dimensions, and any other annotation, anything that's deemed or considered annotation, the new view, the copy, will be exactly the same as the source. It'll take all the detailing with it. If you just choose duplicate, it'll just actually bring forward or copy the building elements, or just show you the building elements in the new view. So we don't need the dimensioning, or do we? Okay, let's bring it with us. Okay, so duplicate with detailing. Okay, so it makes an exact copy of the original view. Now this becomes floor level copy 1, and what I'll get you to do is, if you can right mouse on the copy and rename it and call this one plan-existing. Okay, plan-existing. Now, by the way, what I'm doing, the steps that I'm following here, if we go back to the procedure document, we are here in step 6, project setup. Okay, so what we've done here in 6.2 is we've changed the phase of the existing building elements. Okay, we've done it in a 3D view. We have selected the entire building, and we've changed the phase created to existing. Okay. We then went back to the floor level floor plan, and we noted the change in the walls itself. So the walls then changed to solid black. Moving on in 6.3 is what we're currently doing. Okay, so we're making a copy of the floor level view, and we're changing the name of the copy to plan existing. Okay, now the next step is that we're going to make a second copy of the floor plan. Okay, or you can actually copy the plan existing. It doesn't really matter which one you copy, but we're going to make a copy of the floor plan again, but the second copy we're going to call plan-demo. Okay, so again, you can do a duplicate with detailing and create a floor plan called plan-demo. Okay, so we've got plan-demo and plan-existing. Now, I'll get you the plan-demo looks like this, and this is the one that we're going in plan-demo. This is where we're actually going to demolish parts of the building. Okay, we'll have a look at that shortly. But if you can come back to plan existing, open up plan existing, and what I'd like you to do here is phase of the view is currently set to new construction, okay, and the phase created of the objects we know is existing. All right. What I'd like you to do, so I'm going to deselect that wall and come back to the phase settings of the view. What I'd like you to do is change the phase of the view from new construction to existing. Okay. So change the phase of the view to existing. All right, so note the change.
It's showing the details of the wall.
Yeah, we can now see the walls as they were originally. But this is still we're still calling this the existing floor plan. Now what's happened is that the phase of the view is now the same as the phase of the objects in it. So the phase of the view is existing and the objects are existing. So everything goes back to normal. So if that's the case, then the override is lifted and all of our objects go back to what we call by category, which means they're default. They look normal. There is no override applied. Just as we drew them initially when the phase of the view was new construction and the objects were new construction. Okay? So if the phase of the view is the same as the phase of the object, no override. Because what we're looking at the moment is the building as it was back in 1975. Because back when it was built in 1975, it was a new building. Okay, so we're going back in time. We're having a look at the building as it was. All right. So it all goes back to normal, and that's fine. Okay, but in our demolition plan, it still remains different. There's the override is still in place. Okay, so this plan here, the demolition plan, ultimately is a floor plan view that we're going to present on a sheet, not in this exercise, but in the assessment task. Okay, this becomes one of our first floor plan views that we produce as a view that we're going to include in a series of documents to show the demolition, the proposed demolition. Okay, so when you're presenting this to council for planning approval, I guess you've got to show a floor plan for the proposed demolition and a basic floor plan for the complete build, so before and after. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I'll get you to do initially is, can you just change the underlay setting in this view so that the roof is not visible? Set the underlay back to none. And we're going to now have a look at the way in which we demolish building elements. Now, we go back to learn to our procedure document. Now, in 6.4, change the cut patterns for existing objects. Well, we've already done that. Okay, we did that by clicking on this black band here and removing the tick, the visible tick here. The other thing that we've done here in step 5 is we've actually made the line work halftone in the procedure document, but I'll actually get you to leave it solid black. So don't make this change So, okay, don't tick that option there. So we want to keep it solid black as it is here. Now, demolish building model elements. So we're going to look at demolition next. Now, we'll come back to this, but in step 1, this introduces another view-related setting called a phase filter, and I'll talk more about phase filters later in the exercise. But for the moment, we're going to change the phase filter of the demolition plan to this, which is show previous and demo. This one here. Okay, so back in Revit, we're talking about the floor plan itself. If you scroll down to the phasing settings down here, this is where we find phase filter. At the moment, it's set to show all. Now, if you can click here, you'll get a list of other filter options, and the one we want to choose for this view is show previous and demo, this one here. So just change that. You won't see any changes in the view at the moment, okay? But not only can we change the phase of the view, but we can also change what's known as a phase filter, which will actually show and hide various aspects of the construction. Okay, and as I say, we'll go into this a bit further, a bit later. Okay, so show previous and demo. Now, just coming back to our procedure document, we'll come back to, we're not actually going to demolish just yet. I just want to step forward to what's called the demolition plan. Okay, I'll just make that larger. Okay, so on screen at the moment is the proposed demolition. Okay, now when it comes to the assessment task, what we're going through at the moment will be identical to the assessment task, albeit that you'll be working with a different building. Okay, so in this screenshot, you'll see that parts of the building that are to be demolished are denoted by the red dash with the crosshatch inside the walls, and we've also got some doors and windows to be demolished. Now, notice that this wall here through here is going to be partially demolished. Okay, so we're actually going to actually cut the wall exactly 3 meters from the wall face here. Okay, 3 meters. So we actually have to put a split or a cut through the wall there, and it has to be accurate. And to achieve that, I'll show you how to set that up through using what we call a reference plane. Anyone heard of a reference plane before? Yes? Okay. We also have to see this wall down here. So we also have to cut the wall through here and essentially take this section of wall out. We have to demolish this section of wall. Now, when I say demolish, I don't mean delete, okay? Because we are not deleting any part of this existing. We're actually tagging it for demolition. The hiding of the object will occur, Revit will do that for us. Okay, so when we demolish something, okay, in the demolition plan, you'll see it red dashed and it's marked for demolition. In the final as-built or the final completed floor plan, Revit will automatically hide these objects because we'll tell it to. Okay, but we're not deleting anything. So let's have a look at how we actually achieve these wall splits. Okay, just mainly through here, one through here and one through here. Now to do that, you're going to have to draw a couple of reference planes. Now reference planes you'll find on the architecture tab, work plane panel, reference plane. Okay, so click reference plane and then just draw a reference plane through the wall here, like so. It doesn't matter, the length is really irrelevant, so just draw it through there and draw a second reference plane from the corner here out to the right, but just make sure it's straight. Now, we'll just clear that, just hit escape or click modify. Now, next we actually add a dimension, and if you've actually changed this option here to entire walls, you need to change it back to individual reference. This option here needs to be set to wall faces. Select the wall face here and place a dimension on the reference plane from the wall face to the reference plane, and then click to place. There's no need to put a dimension on this one, so don't worry about that one, just leave that one as it is for the moment. Now, to get this reference plane into the right position, how do we do it? How do we move that reference plane to exactly 3 meters? Yes, exactly. You click on the reference plane. Because you're going to move the reference plane, you need to select it. And in selecting it, what does that do? It activates the dimension. And in activating the dimension, you're able to directly access the dimension amount and type in what it needs to be. So, so why can't I select that reference plane?
Do it like a window.
Yeah, probably the best way. The thing is that when I click on it, what am I selecting? The floor.
Floor.
Yeah. So in that instance, the best approach here is to use the tab key. Now the thing is that if I click on the tab key and just cast your eyes, when you do this, just watch the lower left hand corner of the screen down here. Okay, just keep an eye on that. Now just put your mouse pointer over the reference plane and hit the tab key. Can you see what's happening there? And hit tab again. See how it's actually going from floor to reference plane? Okay, so this is called selection cycling. If you have a lot of objects in one area and you're unable to select the object that you want, you put your mouse pointer in that area and you hit the tab key, and at the same time you keep an eye on the lower left hand corner, and when the object is displayed in the lower left hand corner, you can click and select it. Okay, so in this case we hit the tab key. We've now got the reference plane and we can click to select it. And in selecting it, it enables us to activate the dimension, or the dimension is activated. We can click directly on the dimension parameter and type in 3000 and enter. And click escape a couple of times. And we now have the reference plane exactly where we want it. So is everyone following with that? All right. So having done that, it's now time to actually physically split the wall. Okay. Now, on the Modify tab here, Modify panel, we have two tools here for splitting. We have Split Element and we have Split with Gap. Now, you probably will have used these in the past. Splitting an element will actually just obviously split the wall into two by actually putting a split through it, which is a little bit hit and miss because we can't, in using that tool, we can't actually directly click on the reference plane where it crosses the wall and be positive or certain that we've actually split on that reference plane. So what we do is we use the second option, which is Split with Gap. And again, this is the exact procedure or process that we're going to use in the assessment task. So Split with Gap. So what we do is we choose Split with Gap, and just next to the reference plane, we click the wall and we place a gap. So what I'll do is I'll just hit the escape a couple of times. So we now have the wall in two parts with a very defined gap. Okay. Now, just hit the escape a couple of times and get out of that split with gap tool. Now, just select either of these two walls, and you'll notice that there is a padlock underneath, which you'll need to click and open. So you need to open the padlock. Now the padlock is really controlling that gap, the width of that gap, it's controlling that. So if the padlock is locked, the gap is held. If the padlock is open, we can actually draw one of the walls back and increase the gap. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're unlocking the gap. So having unlocked the gap, we can now take each of these wall ends to the reference plane. And we do that how?
Click on the blue spot.
Sorry?
Clicking on the blue spot?
No, more accurately than that.
Align.
Align. Align. Okay. So
You can also drag it, but that won't be accurate.
no dragging. No dragging. All right. We have to be certain.
Yeah.
All right. Dragging's a bit hit and miss, so we have to be certain. So, if it's mission critical, align. All right. So align. Now, so the rule here is that we actually select the object that we're going to first, which is the reference plane. We then select the object that's going there. Okay, select the reference plane, again, select the object that's going there. Okay, so that split is now occurring exactly on that reference plane. All right, so that's fine. We've now achieved that. We'll come back to this. We now turn our attention to this wall here. Now we only need to split this wall through once up here along the reference plane. Don't worry about this end, that will take care of itself. But having said that, if I select this wall, or if you select this wall, does it look like mine? Does the actual wall stop there, the solid part of the wall, or does it continue down here?
Stops.
It stops? Who has the blue coming down to the bottom here? Okay. All right. Now that comes back to something which we call the order of wall join. Okay. Now that needs to be resolved before we actually go any further, or for those students that have got that happening. So for this to work correctly, we need the actual wall join to be in this order here. Now, with the wall selected like that, come up to the geometry panel and choose this option here, which is wall joins. Okay, now this is only for students that have got the alternative join. Okay, so wall joins.
Mine is not showing the blue color. I mean, it's not showing the fill pattern.
Just select it. So all I did was select it. Okay.
Yeah.
So
mine is going down.
Yeah. So if it's going down, you'll need to choose this option here, which is wall joins. You'll need to come back to the actual wall join, approach the wall join, and you'll get a square around that wall junction. Okay. So when you see the square, just left click like so. Now, in my case, I've got this line going through horizontally. In your case, you've probably got a line going through vertically.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, to fix that or to resolve that, we go up to the options bar and we click next. So it just changes the order in which those two walls join. Okay. I could do this. I could actually click mitre, and it would put the wall join as a mitre. Okay. So we're just changing the way in which these walls are joining, the order. Okay. So I'll take that back to but, and I'll click next, and that's the way it should be for our exercise. Okay. So once you've done that, you can hit the escape key. If you then reselect the wall, it'll look like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's come back up to the other end of the wall, this end of the wall here. And what we need to do now is actually put a split width gap through here, underneath. Hit the escape key a couple of times, reselect the wall, and unlock the gap. Unlock the gap. Okay, deselect, hit escape, and then take the wall end up to the reference plane in each case. Okay, so the order is important. So it's important that you select this wall first, and then reselect the reference plane, and then select this wall second. Okay, so there the split is occurring along this reference plane. Okay. Now that we've split the walls and we're happy that the splits are occurring at the right places, we can actually click on the reference planes and delete them. So again, to select this reference plane, we need to just hover and hit the tab key, and then click to select, and then delete. Okay, so we don't need the reference plane or the dimension.
My second wall is crossing the reference line. It's going up above the reference line.
Yeah, you would have got a warning that you have overlapping.
Yeah, I have overlapping. I have
Yeah.
got the warning, but I have overlapping.
Yeah, that means that you actually took this one. I'll just bring that reference plane back again. So you would have taken this one up first and then this one second.
Yeah.
So the order is important. Otherwise, you'll get an overlap and you'll get a warning. Okay. So the thing that you need to do, if this wall is actually up here, that's the warning you get. You need to click and drag it back here, and then select it and align it with the reference plane. Okay. So there should be no overlapping. Okay, so again, I'll just delete those reference planes.
Something wrong is happening with my drawing.
All right, okay, we've probably just got enough time to actually do the actual demolition, and then we'll have a look at, we'll finish this off next session. Okay, so referring to back to the procedure document, so just have this open on your second screen so that you know what you need to demolish. Okay, so anything in red will be demolished. So note that this window here is to be removed, as is this door here. Now, note that this wall here contains a door, which will also be removed. So when we demolish this part of the wall, the door will automatically be demolished, because Revit knows that you don't demolish a wall and leave the door standing. Okay, so it takes it out. Same as if you demolish a wall that contains windows. You're not going to remove the wall and leave the windows there. Okay, so it knows that, and it'll actually take out the doors or windows. But in some cases, you may actually want to leave the wall but just demolish the door. Now, if you demolish the door, if you remove a door or a window from a wall, in theory, what happens after you've removed the door from a wall? What are you going to do after you've done that? Fill it back up again. So when you fill the opening, what is that? You're rebuilding. It's new construction. Okay, so Revit deems that to be new construction because you're, it's filling in a hole. Okay, so back to Revit. So on the Modify tab, Modify tab Geometry panel, we've got this tool here, which is called Demolish. Big sledgehammer. Okay, so the way this works is that you simply select the tool and click on the object, and Revit will mark it for demolition. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So in this case, that wall is demolished, which takes out that door. This wall is demolished. This wall here is demolished. Just this door. And the back wall here, this wall here that we cut, is also demolished. So click on that. And lastly, this window. Okay, I think that's the extent of it. All right, so just click Modify, hit Escape. So we've now sort of indicated or tagged the objects or parts of the building that we're going to demolish. All right. And I think at this stage we'll leave the exercise at this stage. As I say, we'll finish this off next week. So in the final stage, essentially we create another floor plan, which we deem new construction or complete, and then we start the rebuilding process. Okay. So how's that? Lot to take in. Yeah, so the thing is that I guess understanding project phasing in Revit, there is a bit to sort of get your head around. If you've done it a few times, it starts to, like anything, it sort of starts to make sense, starts to sink in. But essentially, if you are undertaking a renovation extension project in the future, whether it be for your studies or in your private lives, think about using Revit to document it because it's perfect for it. Okay, And at the end of the day, we're still working with one model. So, you know, if you open up your 3D view, I mean, appearance-wise, it may look a little different, but we're still working with that one model. You know, we haven't, you know, at this stage we haven't done any new construction, but at least we've actually demolished parts of it, or marked the parts for demolition. The thing is that in this 3D view, if you go down to the view properties to phasing, if you actually change the phase filter here to show previous and demo, change the phase filter. If you select the roof and you do a temporary hide, which is the shortcut is HH, and look inside and perhaps change the visual style to consistent colours, in a 3D view you can also see the objects that we've now tagged for demolition. Or shaded. Okay. So the thing is that it doesn't matter what view you're in, you can still control the phase of the view, and you can also apply things called phase filters. All right. So you could set up a series of 3D views to show the building in its different stage of evolution. All right. So okay, just type HR. HR will reverse that temporary hide. Change your visual style back to hidden line, and go back to your plan-demo. And at this point, we'll actually close inactive views and save. So save this little exercise and make sure that you bring it with you next session. All right? USB. On a USB, yeah. Okay. All right. Unless there's any questions or concerns, I'll just end the session here. So I'll just finish the recording now, and I'll just help anyone that needs individual help. So thanks everyone. We'll see you in a week's time. Thank you.